moving ahead with our program, I now call upon stage our next speaker, Major General Dr. C. Mani. He is the Vice President of Projects at Zen Technologies Limited. He is a seasoned Indian Army veteran with over 30 years of experience in operations, training, and defense technology. A graduate of IIT Kharagpur and Osmania University, he previously served as Deputy Commandant at the Military College of Telecommunication Engineering. At Zen, he leads ICT infrastructure projects across Northeast India and is a recognized thought leader in cyber warfare and defense technology. Sir, I kindly request you to come.
This slide indicates how technology has impacted warfare. So if you see that earlier, we were hunter-gatherers. So as hunter-gatherers, our basic adversary was the nature or the wild animals. So that's when people started using stones and sharpened sticks and all that. The first time it was decided when they wanted to protect something was when the agrarian age started. That is the time the valley civilizations came up, like the Indus Valley civilization, or the Persian civilization, Egyptian along the Nile. So these are the places which came up as fertile areas, and the economy, the entire world economy was based on these civilizations. So the war which evolved at that point was to hit the source of the economic might. So naturally the wars were all mass on mass. That means the aim was to kill people, mass killing. So, and the kind of war was also fought in that manner. That was the agricultural age. Then when we come to the industrial age, that time it was the industries had come up, the industrial revolution had taken place. And here, the method of killing also became industrial. But now the targets changed slightly, because now economic might became more important. Because economic might dependent on your industries. So the countries which had larger, better infrastructure, they generally became predominant. Like for instance, if you take World War I or World War II, Germany lost basically because the Allies at that point were much more economically powerful. For instance, somebody asked the German general, he says, how did you guys lose? You had General Rommel, you had Guderian, you had such fabulous thinking generals and dynamic people. You did the blitzkrieg. How did you lose the war? So then he replied that the Americans had two generals. They had General Motors and General Electric. So that was the difference in war. So now we had a situation that it is economic might which mattered. The one with larger number of resources won. And there's a slight transition between World War I and II. World War I was attrition warfare. We had machine guns, we had barbed wire entanglements, and we had front lines which are static. And to move a front line, it required, again, humongous amount of effort. And the same front line would be pushed back. So the front lines barely moved about 100 meters, 200 meters. A lot of people died. So that was a kind of warfare. So that is what we call as second generation warfare. Because in this, it was attrition. The person who collapsed out of just tiredness and exhaustion, he was the one who lost. Now the same principle is applied by the French during World War II. They established the Maginot Line. Maginot Line was somewhat built on the same, the First World War I concept of a largely a static line. But then technology had changed. And the Germans were the ones who adapted it beautifully. They came with the concept of blitzkrieg. And blitzkrieg was their armored formations dancing around the enemy. They never knew where they're going to strike. And all the coordination was done using wireless radio. The radio technology had matured at that point of time. And that's where we could say the generation of warfare generation also shifted. From attrition, it came down to maneuver warfare. And a person who was dancing around the opponent and then made him collapse. So this was the kind of strategy which was employed. And the Germans were largely successful until, like I said, they ran out of resources. The economic might of the United States proved a difference. Now we come, during World War II itself, two major things happened technologically. Because war gives rise to innovation. First was, we had the radar technology which had come up. The Battle of Britain, I'm sure people are aware of it, the entire Royal Air Force versus the Luftwaffe. And there were large-scale bombing runs made by Luftwaffe, but they were largely defeated because of the radar chain which was established by the British. And they had the pre-warning, because of which the Royal Air Force could easily contract and could also actually made the Luftwaffe designs, they ensured that they never succeeded. So radar made a lot of difference. Another significant thing which happened in World War II technologically was, there was a machine called the Enigma machine. I'm sure most of us are aware of that Enigma machine. It was a machine which was used to send coded messages to the U-boats which were in the Atlantic, North Atlantic. Those coded messages used to be coded on this machine Enigma, and they used to be sent to the U-boats, they said, to target which part of the convoy. And then when they found they were very effective because these people could not crack the code. So then what was done was, there was a mathematician called Alan Turing. He was from Cambridge. So the British got hold of him and they said, okay, it's your job, crack this code. You're supposed to be the most brilliant mathematician. So then he soon realized that they had a captured machine from Poland. So in that machine, he saw the combinations. He realized there were one followed by 18 zeros. That many combinations possible for setting the key. That key was changed every day at midnight. The first message was reached at 6 in the morning, which was a weather report. So is that actual time to crack the code was just 18 hours. Then he realized that if all the cryptographers of the Allies got together and sat in one room, we cannot break this code. He says only a machine can break another machine. And that was his start when you can say he invented the computer for this. That computer carried out an exhaustive search of all the codes possible. And with the available technology of using mechanical gears and vacuum tubes and so on, he managed to produce a device. But still it was failing until the human element was brought in. The human element was what? Because it was a weather report, it always started with weather report. Then the last two words were, Hail Hitler, yeah. So like we say Jai Hind, they said Hail Hitler. So they knew that all messages, because they were so regimented, all messages ended like that. So he knew that this block has to mean this. When that input was given to the machine became successful. But the actual, I'll say the brilliance of the entire idea was not so much the machine. The brilliance of the idea was, how did they use it? Which, they had cracked all the codes. They had all the messages. But suppose you start reacting to each message, what does it mean? The enemy will come to know that you have cracked the code. He'll change the code. He'll change the machine. So what they did again Alan Turing was brought in. He said, okay, work out the probability of that code was cracked by random. Okay, mathematicians will understand this. The confidence CLs, the confidence level at which, you can say that this was due to random chance that they managed to find and they avoided our attacks. So even that was done mathematically. Till the end of the war, the Germans never came to know that the code had been broken, just because they used probability. And that brought in the third test, which is called the Turing test. Because after the war, if you've seen that movie, Imitation Game, he says, now the Turing test is used today also for artificial intelligence. That is the test. He says, if I'm talking to somebody and I don't know whether it's a machine or a human being, that is the Turing test. So then they asked Alan Turing. So he says, I'm asking the question myself. Am I a human being or am I a machine? Because of me, members of his team lost their family members. He said, we will not react to this message for the larger good. And they lost their brothers. They lost their family members in one of the convoy attacks. He says, am I a monster or am I a machine? I don't know. So that is the Turing test and that is still used. So this was a significant change of computing. And this what continued, like communications was separate, computing was separate. Then we come now, the late 80s, when they started converging. computing and communication, when they converged, that's when we come to the next generation. You can call it the information revolution. We saw it in Desert Storm, when when Saddam Hussein fired a Scud missile, the flash was picked up by satellites. And that same flash, the timing of the flash was then sent to a computer in Pentagon. The Pentagon computers, supercomputers, they calculated the trajectory of the missile. And then the trajectory of the missile, of the Scud, was calculated, sent to a Patriot battery in wherever the affected area where the missile was likely to go through. And that missile battery then activated its Patriot missile in time to interdict the Scud. And all this was done at the speed of light. So this was again a revolution. This is the information revolution, because information became the key. And this you are now hitting into the third generation of warfare, where information matters. Then we come now, as time progressed, but the same Americans, they lost badly when they went to Iraq. They lost badly when they went to Afghanistan. How did that happen? That is where we come now to the fourth generation of warfare. In the fourth generation of warfare, it doesn't matter. If you take it like a boxing bout, the first generation was you keep pummeling each other. The whoever guys get exhausted, he loses. In the second or third generation was you keep dancing around him, tire him out, and then the person who's the thing, he wins. Third generation was knockout, hit him by knockout. But in fourth generation warfare, it doesn't matter who's winning. Between the two contestants, they are fighting. The ring is there, but the target is the audience. The trade wars are going on between US and China. But who is the target? They are fighting among each other, but the target is us. The target is the European Union. So if you look at it, it is basically for sympathy. And the person who wins the sympathy wins the war. And that's how the alliances are going to change right now. So this is what the state, now we are entering into the stage of a fourth generation warfare, when winning the sympathy is more important. Right and models doesn't matter anymore. And underdog will always be favored. So whatever Israel does, how much of right they have on that side, Palestine will have support. Hamas will have support. And they are going to leverage that. And that is what is the key in our fourth generation warfare thinking, that we have to think accordingly. That whoever gets the sympathy will win. A similar thing, there's a lot of lessons for us also, what is happening in Kashmir and everywhere. If you lose the sympathy of the world audience for whatever policies you have, then you're in trouble. This is a slightly different way of looking at it. This is land, air, sea, space. These are 4 domains of warfare. And classically, we had the army, we had the air force, we had the navy for this. But with the intangible part coming in, information, psychological warfare, cyber warfare, people have been speaking about that. So that is the dimensions of warfare now have changed. And like I said, the whole game is of information. And now the subtle part which comes is, if you see, why is it a revolution? There were, in my view, there are only 3 or 4 revolutions. Everything generally taken a revolutionary idea, a revolutionary concept. It's a complete different way of doing things. I feel technologically there only been 3 or 4. The first was, I'll say, the invention of the wheel. That was a revolution. The second thing I would say is when you come to the industrial revolution. Because where the machine could do what thousands of men could do at one time. Thousands of weavers were put out of business because one particular machine was doing all the job. So that was a revolution because the human body had been amplified. Then when you come to the computer, that is again a revolution, information revolution, because the human mind had been amplified now. Like I said, all the cryptographers, it was done by that one single computer. So the human mind had been amplified. Now, body, mind, the third thing comes is soul. So I feel is that the next revolution is already with us, is the AI revolution. And they are targeting your soul. And I was just discussing with General Khandare now about data. This whole thing revolves around data. Whoever has the data, like somebody has said, if data is a new oil, and China is the new Saudi Arabia. They have all the data. And if you look at it, that is where all these wars are leading to. See the way he has played out the tariffs. It is against those societies or communities or nations where data is hoarded. The tech bros who attended the, inauguration of Trump, they have a hand in this. My personal opinion, my view is that they have a hand because they are looking at data. So China's data is this thing, so they know they can't get hold of that. European Union has got its own GDPR. Again, the data is, privacy concerns are so important there. So that's why he says European Union is not allies to me at all. So you look at it from the data point of view, and India, I'll say, terrible at data. All our data is lying somewhere else. So that's why India is okay, as far as they're concerned. Because their algorithms are going to work. Their big data is going to work. Their AI is going to work. And that is what, and warfare is also going to change accordingly. We'll just take a small look at the technologies. Since my charter was technologies, so I'll just talk a little bit about that. First one is the SDR, software-defined radios. I don't know how learned the audience is, so, but just to suffice it to say that earlier it was basically hardware which was doing all the job of communicating. Now software has come into it. Personally, I remember that when I was posted in Arunachal Pradesh sometime in 2009 or so, and my corps commander told me, he says, these Chinese drones are flying overhead, and we can see the lights which are going past. Do something about it. So the people on the ground could see lights going, but none of our devices could pick up anything. Our radars could not pick it up. Our RF detectors, radio frequency detectors could not pick it up. But the lights are going. I had jammers, but what do I jam when I don't know how it is communicating? So I told him, sir, I can't do anything about it. And the only solution, as per me, was I said, if you want to knock out a tank, another tank is the best option. You want to knock out an aircraft, another aircraft is the best option. So you fly your own helicopter, come close to it and knock it off, if you want to knock off the Chinese drones. But after I retired a few years back, and I joined my present appointment, I was pleasantly surprised to see that because of this SDR, software-defined radio technology, we are now able to detect drones. The RF, which is being used between the remote control and the drone, we are able to detect that because of the software-defined radios. So that is the implication of this. And they're also used because the basic, like I said, all functions have been transferred into software. So just imagine, otherwise there was a patrol guy holding a small walkie-talkie. If you go back, he's got a bigger set. For strategic communications, even bigger sets. Then you have satellite communications. You have so many varieties of mediums of communication, so many varieties of sets. But if a software can do all that job, then look at the advantages that you have. And that's what has happened right now. The next is cloud computing. So this again is a technology which is very much required by the armed forces. See, basically it is that once it's on the cloud, like we know, if our photograph is on the mobile and is also on the cloud, then I can access it with any device, access it from anywhere. A similar thing, a soldier who's right in the front, and he wants a better battle picture. How is he going to get it? He's going to get it only if he can access the cloud. So, and that cloud should be made available to him, as close to him as possible. So that is where there's a lot of options and choice. I mean, a lot of scope for use cases. If any of our, say, entrepreneurs or startups can look at this, how can you make the cloud available to the soldier in front? We are still a long way off from that. Basically because of lack of infrastructure, which I'll again talk of later. But this is what is actually required. That a soldier should be able to access the same cloud which is available in Delhi or anybody else. If people like, I think there was one of the subtext which, one of the presentations which I heard, that on drones. He said, I believe army is using drones for intelligence. The subtext of that statement was, why didn't you find out what's happening in Pahalgam? If you are actually using drones, you should have known. Okay. So there's a valid point there. You have all this technology, but we are still facing the brunt of those attacks. That means somewhere we are failing. Quantum computing is the next thing, which I think people would be aware of what it is. It has got two aspects. One is that basically the aim is that your existing, say, computing things will, the existing computing speeds will enhance dramatically because of quantum computers. What it implies is, what we are so, we are so used to, our phone pay, Google Pay and all that, our entire banking system is based on OTP. The OTP is based on a public key, private key network. It's based on exchange of keys. And all that is based on the RSA. There were 3 guys from MIT who made the algorithm for the public key, private key. It was a brilliant algorithm. Their PhD thesis was just 3 pages. But the algorithm was so brilliant, and that's how they did that. They ensured that this entire banking infrastructure is working on that, based on the computational infeasibility of solving a problem of factorizing 2 large primes. As you take 2 random large primes, 320 digits and all that, so it is assumed that your computer cannot figure out the other prime by factorizing it. That's the simple logic on which your entire banking system is based now. But if quantum computing comes, then you're in trouble, because the quantum computer will figure it out. So we are now looking already at post-quantum cryptography. So we have to look at that. So how do we tackle that stage when quantum computers come? But in my opinion, quantum computers, because they require very intense environments, shielded environments to function actually. So for that, I think it's a few years down the line. But what is of immediate thing which can be done, which I know there's one startup in Bangalore, I interacted with them, and they are working on something called quantum key distribution. Like I said, there are keys which are exchanged. Our army of people will know. There's something called a cipher courier. Okay, for youngsters, it is the most horrible thing that you become a cipher courier for that month. Okay, because you have to get reservation, and you have to carry a cipher courier box, and that cipher courier box, you'll go and pick it up from the nearest headquarters. Then you'd go with that cipher courier box and that guard, and you have to go all across and distribute the keys where it is required. And most of our people used to hate that because they didn't have reservations and all that. It was quite a hassle. So the hope is the cipher courier system can stop in case we have quantum keys. The basic advantage of this quantum keys is that, like if, let's say, cipher courier got intercepted, somebody took a photocopy of it, and you won't know whether he has read the code or not, because there is no information available that way. It may have got compromised, you don't know. The person carrying it itself may be compromised. So you don't know if the key was read. Whereas in quantum keys, because of the nature of quantum particles, there's something called quantum entanglement. So there are 2 particles, quantum particles separated out. If I change one particle, the other changes automatically. Anywhere in the universe you take it. That is the quantum theory, that is based on quantum physics. So now if I read the key, this person will come to know that the key has been read, because the quantum state will collapse. And this is a technology which is available to us right now. We have implemented it in MCT, which was there, using the help of the startup. So these quantum, but we have not been able to achieve distances, but this is something which China has done. They have got 1,000 kilometer, they have been managed to exchange, using the satellite, they managed to exchange these quantum keys over a distance of 1,000 kilometers. It is a huge technology demonstrator. Because the quantum states had to be preserved, for that, that is a challenge right now. Big data, we already spoke of, because it is linked to our AI. And like I said, AI is something which it's going to make a huge impact. I'll cover it a little later also. And there are certain, Indirectly impacted, precision-guided munitions, people have spoken of this. Unmanned sensor platforms, directed energy weapons, social media, we all know. Like I said, in fourth generation warfare, whether you wear a uniform or not doesn't matter. But if there is an inflammatory post and you click like on that, or you forward it, you have become a contestant. You have become a person participating in the war. So social media, so all of us are warriors in this. Anybody with a keyboard, anybody with a mobile phone is a warrior. Nanotechnology, we always want, Indian Army always wants, or armed forces, we always want things which are, that is one of the challenges in my present job also, because they want portable systems, and our systems are big. To get it down to 20 kgs is a challenge, and that's where nanotechnology comes in. So like we spoke of warfare, how it has changed. I think Indian Army, we are fighting all generations of war. That's the beauty of Indian Army and the armed forces, is in, say, northern borders, along with China, or along the line of control, we are in second generation warfare. Eyeball to eyeball. There is a line of control fence. And warfare is still fought the same way there. No change. And if you fight the war in, say, deserts, you're into third generation warfare. And fourth generation warfare, we're already aware of. It's all around us now. And every time you react to a divisive comment or a divisive agenda of someone, you're feeding into that. So the hybrid warfare, all of us are facing. So, and for all this, we need, voice, data, video. Everybody wants to know everything as far as possible, and as close to reality as possible. For that, you require all this: network-enabled platforms, higher bandwidth, data management, sensor shooter integration, and so on. Because the difference in the warfare is also when the sensors and shooters, earlier like it was with a platform-centric, like a tank was independent, a ship was independent, aircraft was independent. That's how the warfare was fought in World War II and so on. But the moment you integrated all three, so that the sensors of the ship is not that only what the ship sensors are saying, and only the shooter of the ship was using that. The weapon in the ship was using. But now, whatever the ship is saying, whatever the aircraft is saying, everybody is able to get the same common picture. If you get that, then you're into the third generation of warfare, and where the sensors can be of any service, can be Navy, Air Force, Army, wherever. Those sensors are all integrated and networked. And again, the shooter the person who's best suited to respond to that situation, he is the person who will be told, engage in that event. So that is the shooter. And the decision maker is the third part. If all three are networked, the challenge is if you want to entrust decision making to the AI, then you have to think about that. Some AI use cases which have been this thing. I don't know if there are people from those appropriate startups and all. Satellite change detection, aerial target recognition. All these things are there. I think I was discussing with Mr. Bobby right now during the break. And I think he's working on this. He said he can translate a document in any language. If it's written in, say, one language, it can be translated and it's captured in an editable format after that. So there's implications for our intercepts and all, which we get in SI. Test space. Okay. So these are the things which, so natural language processing, all of them are, AI use cases which are there. Before I finish, a few thoughts on tech absorption. I feel that, I've spoken a lot of high-tech stuff. Like somebody asked, how is it relevant to India and so on. I think where we are lacking, I personally feel, is in our Machiavellian ingenuity. You got to have that kind of a twisted mind to weaponize low-cost technology. If you don't have that twisted mind, and you keep following the straight and narrow path, then it is tough. But the countries who have done it have been very successful. I'll take Pakistan's case itself. I remember the first time there was I'll call it an aero model, not a drone. That aero model was shot down in Punch somewhere. It was brought down to the core headquarters. They told me, analyze this. It was in shot down condition. It had been brought on by a LMG. So when I looked at that, the engine was made of Vespa. The tires were of Dunlop. And those days we had the cable TV things, running around. And there were cable TV gadgets inside. I said, this is complete jugaad. And they were using it pretty effectively. So, and this is all low-cost tech. And that is what we need to I'm not saying go into high-tech stuff. And let's get this and let's get that and let's get this fancy toys. Like one of the projects which are coming to us is we want to make our T90 into a thing which can protect itself against drones and everything. So it's a valuable thing, but that is very high-tech. To put that into a small platform, most of the modern countries of the world are grappling with that. Russia has not been able to do it so far in Ukraine. They have been targeted so badly by those Bayraktar drones. And we are after that we want that. Whereas I feel if you weaponize low-cost technology, that will be a good option. And that is what we have to think, how do you want to do it? I'll give you a small example. We were told that develop an AI thing in MCT, we told develop an AI thing for recognizing cars. Because what had happened was, in the Srinagar Valley, there was a Tata Sumo filled with explosives, which crossed 4 states. And it entered into J&K, reached Srinagar. And all the time, the license plate was of a Honda Activa. And it was not recognized by any of the state police and all this thing. Nobody recognized that. So I said, okay, this is a good use case. Let's do a vehicle recognition AI, project. Then my technical guys, they got after it. They put 4 cameras outside our MCT gate, vehicles coming and this thing, they're doing all that stuff. Then I realized this is a very tough job to do a vehicle recognition like this. Then I said, let's think more practically. So the issue is what? You need the license plate. Okay. I said, give me something which can just pick up the license plate. And then this license plate, I should have access to the national repository of data of that license plate, what vehicle it is, what is the type. And I should be able to match. That's it. That much information, I give it in some other manner to the guard there. That this is a license plate, it belongs to this class of vehicle, and this is a vehicle. So if he sees that and it doesn't match with that, automatically, that's all which is required. You don't need a high-tech solution for that. So that's what I said. This is one of the examples I feel that we should, and that is a more practical way of doing things. So we had to find practical ways of using low-cost technology. Iran has done it very effectively. They use few dollars worth GPS, and they sent a strong message to Trump when they targeted in that airbase. They targeted 2 empty buildings precisely with their missiles using that GPS-enabled technology. And Trump got the message in his previous term. He got the message that if I could target empty buildings so precisely, I can target other things also. And they use low-cost technology. Ukraine has been doing it brilliantly also, even now. There they have actually crowdsourced intelligence. There's an app which anybody in Ukraine can access that app. You have that app, and you have some information of the enemy, you put it into that. So they have crowdsourced it. So that is the kind of thinking I feel we should have. As far as infrastructure is concerned, I would like to take your attention to this. Jiang Zemin, sometime in 93, he made this statement. He says, in a country as large as China, it is not possible to separate military and civil communications. It's a one-line statement, but it has huge implications. And I wish we had followed this route. I've always been a proponent of this. Because there was a time, when I was commissioned and all the time, when the military communications were ahead of the civil communications. We had things faster. For instance, our first mobile device was part of Plan Aaron. We had some thing called Plan Aaron. Our commanders had a mobile in their hand, And this was in late 70s and early 80s. And nobody else had mobiles. And the army had it. Our commanders had it for their restricted area of operations. That time we were still ahead of the technology curve. The armed forces were ahead of it. But then the pace of change was so rapid. And the problem of equipping such a large force that today we are certainly behind the rest of the civilian this thing. So we had to find ways and means of integrating this. And it has already been done. I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to talk about it in a, this kind of an audience. But already the thought process is there. It has been implemented because the civil infrastructure has improved so much. And another example I can give of this thing was, like when I had gone into Tibet, we traveled from Gangtok to Nathula Pass. Our mobile stopped working in Gangtok. Moment we crossed Gangtok, mobile stopped working. Moment we crossed Nathula Pass and into Tibet, Airtel phone started ringing without international SIM. That's because Airtel has a tie-up with Chinese Unicom. Across Nathula Pass, Airtel is available. There's no internet from Gangtok till Nathula. That is the state. So we need to take, and here again, innovation, if it happens, nothing like it. And another thing I would like to tell you about Chinese is that the way they have focused, you will see after the tariff war started, they came out with 3 or 4 significant technological milestones. First was the DeepSeek. The shares of NVIDIA and everybody fell the moment DeepSeek came in. Next was BYD. Super fast charging, 5 minutes, I'll charge it to 300 kilometers. Tesla shares, everybody else's fell. It shows their focus. Quantum keys, I already told you what they have done. 2 to 3 days back, I was seeing in the newspapers, they have done a robotics half marathon. And that was a beautiful picture, I'll say. It conveyed so many things. It showed 3 engineers running behind a robot. The robot is running a half marathon, 3 engineers are running behind it to ensure it runs properly. So what does it indicate? It indicates that you can't be sitting in an air-conditioned office and design stuff. You have to be fit enough to run the half marathon yourself if you want your robot to run the half marathon. And that's the kind of focus which is needed. And they caught these 3-4 technologies. Who can stop them? And that is where I think even I went to a small country like Singapore, I went to the NTU there, Nanyang Technological University. Any department I went to, cybersecurity, computer science, be it robotics, be it mechanical engineering, all these guys are talking of only one thing, autonomous vehicles. I said, I come to a communication engineering department, why are you talking of autonomous vehicles? He says, it has come down as a directive from the government of Singapore that you guys are going to be focused on autonomous vehicles. Because China follows rules, Singapore follows rules. So autonomous vehicles will work there. India, there's no chance of it working. But it will work in Singapore because everybody follows rules there. And they've actually made the largest autonomous bus in the world. And I've seen the autonomous vehicle track. So we need that kind of a focus and a dedicated approach if you want to really get somewhere. And this is where, this is the final thought I want to leave with you, that 5G has been rolled out. But armed forces are still starved for bandwidth, starved for data and everything else. So we have a civilian network of 5G. Reliance and GUS. The only thing is, like I said, if you can't just stop at a revenue point. Okay, Sikkim is my revenue point, so Gangtok is my revenue point, I'll stop there. There has to be some, if you're looking at CSR, there has to be some national security responsibility also, not just corporate social responsibility. Some responsibility there also to take that network up. And all that the armed forces require, which I've been speaking of, they're all there in 5G right now. It's a question of, again, there's a use case available to startups. How can you adapt it for our requirement? I'll not talk of all those. I think people may not understand. But basically, it has got 3 qualities. It has got machine-to-machine communication, which is what all our surveillance devices require. They can communicate machine to machine. Enhanced mobile broadband, so that, like I said, bandwidth hungry, big data for decision making, all that has to be carried. And URLLC is ultra reliable, low latency. This is required for if a missile is coming at me, at that point, I can't have a delay. I can't say buffering. That's what happens when you run out of bandwidth. So at that point, you need ultra reliable, low latency. Either for your if a hypersonic missile will be launched or it's coming at you, you got to intercept it, you need that ultra reliable, low latency communication. That is what is required desperately by armed forces, and that's what we need innovation for. I finished. I think questions will take it later.
One more question, because we are running short of time.
Okay.
One question. So,
Yeah. The young lady there, yeah. Hi.
By non-state actors. As currently we can see in Northeast, we can see there was a violence between two communities, but use of drones was there. So to further, to prevent the further threats or to prevent the further attack, similar to what happened in Northeast Manipur, what measure has been taken up?
I don't know. I'm not part of that chain because I'm no longer in that field. I don't know what measures have been taken up. But I'm sure that drones are being used.
Yes,
if you're saying for as early warning, they would be used. But I don't know what measures have been taken up. Sorry.
So because we can see drone insecurity, so as
Yeah,
we see there is
I'll tell you,
misuse of
we have
it.
made some counter drone systems, Zen technology. I'm actually in that vertical, which looks at counter drone technologies, and we have supplied some to the Indian Air Force. We are supplying to the Indian Army also. So that part is there. But the thing is, the threat is so humongous. I mean, it's everywhere. How many systems can you buy? So you have to come out with, again, there's a lot of innovation possible there. That how do you, defend from that threat? So that is a challenge, because equipping itself is a big problem. So actually, for the MHA, the Ministry of Home Affairs, we made out they asked us our suggestions, because they not yet come up with a RFP or this thing for what kind of anti-drone solutions they require. So we made out a grid. We made out something, because they also have different challenges. For convoy, for VIP protection, a different requirement of counter-drone is required. For, say, if we are part of a counter-terrorism grid, like say in Kashmir or something, there a different kind of counter-drone system is required. If you're along the Bangladesh border, a different kind is required. For Manipur, a civil law and order situation, a different kind counter-drone system is required. So we are giving them those specs, but the action has to be taken on that. We have said these are the kind of ideal specs we are recommending that you procure. They'll have to float out the RFPs and this thing.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, as I understood that you said we should be using the same 5G network as what civilian is using, but isn't it threatful? Because enemy can easily intercept what army is communicating. So isn't it that we need a closed loop communication rather than going on a civilian
I agree with that, but so that is a challenge we have to face, and it's not like if China himself is doing that, they are using the same network, okay, and so it is not a uncrackable solution. Like one of the solutions which I can tell you is we thought of this in 2011 or 12. In your mobile, 0 to 9 dialing is there, but actually it is capable of hex dialing. Hex dialing is 0 to 9 A, B, C, D, E, F, where F stands for 16. Okay, and A stands for 10, like that. So you can go beyond that. So that time one of the proposals we gave was, let us use only hex dialing for armed forces and debar everybody else from that. So automatically you put a layer of security into that. Apart from all the other measures possible of security, there are many other measures. And we are already tackling that challenge, and I think it has been successfully tackled. It is a test bed which is going on. I don't have more details of that, but it is doable. It's doable. The actual challenge is not so much security, in my opinion, as much as because the technology is very complicated. For instance, they have massive input, massive output antennas. Otherwise, the normal 4G and 3G didn't have that. Now, this 5G phones, 5G technology has so many of these. Now, to package all those antennas, take it to the forward area, and ensure you get the benefits, that's a challenge. So that's what I said, miniaturization. But otherwise, I think if we adopt 5G and we can make it available, armed forces will bless everyone that we got technology there.
Understood. Thanks.
Yeah.
Last one?
It's up to you. I mean, I don't know. I think with lunch, during lunch also we can talk.
Yeah.
Huh? I'll be here for lunch. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Drone TV, your gateway to the latest in drone technology, GIS innovations, and AI-driven solutions. To partner with us or promote your company on Drone TV, visit www.dronetv.in. Contact us at +917 5201 23555.